Wolverine still beats people, and the detective from Zodiac tries to let another killer go in Prisoners.
Cut. So, how do you follow up a film in which Wolverine absolutely destroys hundreds of ninjas, yakuzas, samurai, a robot? Easy. We give him the next 2 hours and 20 minutes beating up one guy who lives in an RV and has the IQ of a 10-year-old. Wolverine absolutely destroys hundreds of
JabberTalky. Oh yeah.
So this is JabberTalky's review of Prisoners. I'm JabberTalky, your host. This is my first video, so you have no idea what to expect. It'll all be fresh. So I watched this film today, and I gotta say that the acting was phenomenal. Hugh Jackman, I could definitely see him getting an Oscar nomination for this, but not only him, Jake Gyllenhaal, who, I gotta admit, I have not been the biggest fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, but the acting across the board was just great, which is important in a film like this. It's touching on some pretty deep questions. None of it would work if not for these three pillars that I felt were essential to the director, which was acting, excellent cinematography, and a score that absolutely just traps you in the mood and the atmosphere. If you've watched it, you kind of get the vibe that it's like a little bit of Silence of the Lambs, a little bit of Seven, and the movie definitely lives up to fitting in that vein of film, that sort of that genre, the thriller. If you pay attention, you can see things connecting. It does a really good job making everything that happens feel natural. And when you get to those moments where you're like, whoa, that wasn't something I expected, you feel like the movie earned it. The movie earned the surprises. The movie earned the conclusion that it leads to. And that's important, so that the audience can have catharsis. They can feel like they got their money's worth and the conclusion was deserving, and there isn't more that needs to be said. This movie does that in spades, and I love that because it's so hard to find these days. Hey, let's do this. They'll never expect that. Well, of course they won't expect that because your narrative wasn't naturally leading to that conclusion or dropping little crumbs so that when that big surprise happens, when the big reveal happens, you're like, oh, I could see that actually happening, instead of, whoa, that came out of nowhere. Aliens. Hugh Jackman, you see this guy and he's just brutalizing this guy. It's rough. I mean, this guy looks like, but it gets to this point you're like, oh my gosh, is that a person or is that a slab of meat? It's really rough. And it's Wolverine. I mean, it's Hugh Jackman. It's Mr. Huge Jacked Man. Yeah. If that guy locked me up and he told me to give me back my daughter, I'd be like, oh, you don't need to say any more. You see the rage in his eyes, but then you see the tears coming down, and it's like this perfect storm of, I am so angry, and I'm absolutely destroyed inside because I can't find my daughter. I gotta say, Jackman needs to get an Oscar nom for this. The potency of the film's themes of compromising one ideal to fulfill another lies in Jackman's performance, which manages to make one of the greatest on-screen hypocrites I've ever seen someone that you can't help but want to root for and sympathize with. He's portrayed as a really, right-wing conservative, true blue Boy Scout, NRA member, backwoods conspiracy theorist. He's this really strict, set in his ways individual with great intentions. He has the best of intentions to protect his family. But because of the events that happen in the movie, he becomes such a hypocrite and backed into a corner when he can't do that anymore. He loses it. I can't blame him. I would probably lose it. It's pretty intense. And then Jake Gyllenhaal. You see his character and you get the feeling that he's got this history. He's never failed to solve a case. Then they find this one case that poses the risk of destroying their perfect record. So that's a little cliche, but Jake Gyllenhaal's portrayal of the character, you see him and you're like, this guy's got a lot of background. It's like there's this whole other movie, and or there was a whole other 2 hours before explaining his background, and you just walked into it. You walked into this world. Paul Dano's acting, phenomenal. He's not all the way there. They established that his IQ is basically that of a 10-year-old. So you're like, he's not all the way there, you know? He's just a kid, leave him alone. But you also know that there's this dark side to him, and you can't quite place it. And you're like, I don't think you should be turning that guy's face into just a raw steak. But I got a feeling he's going to talk this time. Roger Deakins is the director of photography. He really focuses on using negative space in all of the shots. And you don't feel like he wasted a single shot in the movie. The whole town's gathering to try to encourage the families, and they've got candles lit. And all you see all along the corners of the screen, it's darkness, it's night, pitch black night, but then you see the candles lit, this orange glow from the flames, and you see the figures, the silhouettes of people holding the candles as the camera is panning over. It perfectly creates this mood of mystery and suspense, because you only see exactly what he wants you to see, and you focus on that. And so when something happens, it's jarring, it's tense, because that photography is amazing. I love it. That and the music by Johan Johansson, it was very minimalist, and it never got bombastic. I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan, but Hans Zimmer would not have been a good choice for this movie. You wanted something that was minimalist, simple, and again, it works perfectly in tune with the cinematography, making you feel exactly what they want you to feel. This is precision filmmaking. The best shot I've seen all year. Everything is focusing on one tree trunk. That is the most ominous tree trunk I have ever seen in the history of cinema. And the camera focuses on it. It's dead quiet. And it zooms in. And it zooms in more and more, and you're like, something bad just happened. And that's so amazing with the cinematography that it can say so much. Literally, they just push the narrative forward with nothing more than a shot of a tree trunk. That tree trunk needs to be on the Oscar nomination list for Best Supporting Tree. So, either way, so I saw Prisoners, and I thought it was amazing. It's definitely in my top 10 of the year so far, which unfortunately isn't saying that much, because this year has been a bit of a disappointment for me. But I recently saw Spectacular Now, which I really should do a video on. That movie blew my mind. That is my favorite movie of the year. But Prisoners, at this moment, currently in second. So, JabberTalky would have to say that this movie is definitely jabber-worthy of your time. So I would give it out of 10. I hate when we do a 5-star rating scale. 1, everybody does it, and 2, I really want to be more precise than that, you know? It's not always that simple. It's like, this 4-star movie isn't the same as this 4-star movie. But I would give Prisoners a 7.5 out of 10. I would say the pros of the movie are cinematography, outstanding. I love it. Cinematography captured me. It mesmerized me the whole time. The music was great, very minimalist, really pulled you in, set the tone, made it so much more emotional. Then lastly, the acting. Those 3 things were amazing. Solid story. Cons, just some stuff in the final act that I thought I didn't quite agree with how they did it. Both as far as plot choices, and then as consistent with the character, where you have these characters that have been acting a certain way. By the end of the movie, there's a couple choices they make, and you're like, I don't feel like you would have actually done that. But I see why you did that, because it served the plot narrative that the director and the screenwriter were trying to go towards, the direction, their goals and objectives. But those are nitpicks, and I don't want to be the guy that says, I could have written the screenplay better than you. But basically, yeah, I don't want to be that guy. So I can't really hold that against them. But other than that, amazing movie. 7.5 from JabberTalky is a great score, by the way. As I said, JabberTalky, verdict is that this movie is jabber worthy of your time. Definitely worth watching. I gotta say, if this is what we're going to be having for the fall season, for the Oscar season of the year 2013, we are in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen. I'd love to discuss with you guys and hear your opinions and see what I can learn from you and what we can discuss as a community, because I respect your opinions. And I know we don't agree. That's okay. That's a great thing about movie critiquing, is we don't have to agree, and when we disagree, that's when the fun starts. I want to hear what you think. Do you think Jackman was right? His character, Keller Dover, do you think he was in the right? Do you think he was in the wrong? Independently of that, do you think you would have done the same in his shoes? What would you have done? And do you think the extreme measures he took were okay? Or maybe you should have done something differently? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Cut.